Welcome back. More reaction now to the US action in Iran overnight. In the past few moments, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has been speaking.
Well, we've long had concerns about the Iranian nuclear programme and been very clear that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. The US has now taken action to alleviate that threat. It is important that we now de-escalate the situation, stabilise the region, and get the parties back around the table to negotiate. And I've been speaking with international leaders this morning to that end. So I want to reassure the British public that we're doing everything we can to stabilise the situation, to de-escalate the situation, and to get to a negotiated outcome. But I'm very clear in my own mind that Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. That is the greatest threat to stability in the region.
Your solution to no nuclear weapon, though, was diplomatic routes, not strikes. The UK's been clear no military action can put an end to Iran's nuclear capabilities, and the language on both sides this morning is worrying. President Trump has said future attacks would be far greater and a lot easier. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran, greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Iran has said the events overnight will have everlasting consequences. Do you agree escalation seems very real? And are you prepared to offer military support, UK military support, if needed?
Well, my focus is on de-escalating the situation. I accept your challenge that there is a risk of escalation. That's a risk to the region. It's a risk beyond the region. And that's why all our focus has been on de-escalating, getting people back around to negotiate what is a very real threat in relation to the nuclear programme. In relation to the UK, we were not involved in the attack. We were given due notice, as we would expect as close allies to the US. And we have been moving assets to the region to make sure that we're in a position to protect our own interests, our personnel and our assets, and of course those of our allies.
Prime Minister, if Iran attacks the US, that would be an attack on a NATO ally. If they attack bases, etc., in the region, it could trigger Article 5. Are you prepared for that, and would the UK become involved?
Well, I'm not going to speculate about what may happen because all of my focus is on de-escalation. But I do want to reassure the public we have taken all necessary measures to protect UK interest, UK personnel, and to work with our allies to protect their interests as well. That's what you would expect. But my focus is on de-escalating this situation, dealing with the threat that is that nuclear programme, but getting the parties around the table to negotiate an outcome to this.
On Tuesday morning, you said how important de-escalation was. This was at the G7. You told me you didn't think a US attack was imminent. You sat next to President Trump at the G7 dinner of leaders. You said nothing the president said suggests he's about to get involved in this conflict. On the contrary, here we are. He has struck Iran. He's done exactly the opposite of what you said you thought he was going to do. Do you feel foolish, frustrated that he's not listening?
Well, it's clearly a fast-moving situation, and there's been a huge amount of discussions in the days since the G7 ended, and the US has now taken the action to alleviate the threat that Iran's nuclear programme poses. My position throughout has been as a calling for de-escalation, to get people around the table to negotiate a better outcome diplomatically. And I've been talking to international leaders in recent days, but particularly intensely this morning. We'll continue to do so during the course of today.
And just final question, Prime Minister, what's your message to British citizens? Are you getting them out of the region now?
Well, for British citizens, we've been saying for some time to register their presence. And so far as Israel is concerned, just as soon as we can get charter flights off, we will do so. But I urge all citizens to make contact with the Foreign Office so that we can facilitate whatever support is needed.
OK, Prime Minister, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's bring in our political correspondent, Amanda Acas, who's in Westminster. Amanda, what do you make of that?
Well, I think what's very interesting is almost what the Prime Minister didn't say there. So Beth Rigby, our political editor, started by asking him whether the UK supports the US strikes on Iran. And he really didn't come out and say explicitly that the UK does support them. He talked a lot about really backing the goal that the US has in terms of eliminating the Iranian nuclear program, about how the UK government sees that program as a grave threat to us here in the UK, not just more broadly to stability across the Middle East. But I think it's quite clear the message that he was making over and over again, as we've heard him say so many times over the past week, is that his focus is on de-escalation and diplomacy. Now, that's clearly a message which hasn't been heard by the White House. What we've seen is the biggest escalation imaginable, really. And clearly, we saw David Lammy over the past week travelling to Washington, travelling to Geneva, having those talks with the Iranian foreign minister, trying to get talks off the ground, to come to some kind of diplomatic solution. He's been very clear, speaking in the House of Commons earlier this week, as Beth alluded to there, that the UK believes that there isn't a military solution that can, on its own, completely eliminate the Iranian nuclear program. Now, Donald Trump said that the 3 sites have been obliterated, but clearly that doesn't mean an end to the nuclear program. The UK position, as indeed the European allies' position seems to be that actually we need to get back to the table and come to a diplomatic solution, which I think is interesting in the sense that Keir Starmer has obviously invested a lot of political capital in building this close relationship with Donald Trump. He talked about the fact that we're key allies. That's why the UK was notified in advance about this. But it's very unclear what would happen if the US does then come and ask for the UK support, or if Iran retaliates, attacks US military bases, military personnel across the Middle East, how the UK would respond in terms of NATO coming to the defence of our NATO ally. Now, he said he didn't want to speculate about that because at the moment that's really counter to his message of de-escalation. But I think one thing is very clear over the past few days is that the UK really isn't a big player in this. We're not being listened to on the international stage. Another aspect that's quite interesting is that the Prime Minister, we've just heard in the past few minutes, is due to be chairing a meeting of COBRA this afternoon, bringing together the relevant ministers and military officials and other members of the kind of top national security team, really to look at what the UK's response needs to be going forward. Now, the position from Downing Street has been, we have been having these meetings regularly over the past week, and therefore we've taken this action to try and prepare ourselves for all eventualities by moving typhoons across to Cyprus, getting them ready in position in case they are needed to add to the force already there, as well as the other sort of mitigating measures that they've attempted to put in place. There's also been work done in terms of repatriation flights he was talking about there. Now, we learned on Friday that the UK government said that they were working with the Israeli authorities to try and get flights out of Tel Aviv, but we now understand that they now say that they're actually asking people to book those flights. They have a specific flight plan for next week. They want people to book onto it in order to get out, and they're saying that they could try and arrange more if the demand is there, but they're really urging all British nationals who want to get out of Israel to register their presence as part of that process. He's also talking a lot about, as part of that diplomatic process, continuing talks with other allies. We understand there have been talks going on this morning. They'll continue, as you would expect, this afternoon, meetings with the military, of course, but clearly a very fast-moving, uncertain situation, and for Sir Keir Starmer, a very delicate diplomatic route to try and tread. As a Labour Prime Minister, he's all too aware of what happened previously when the UK followed the US into war in the Middle East. He definitely doesn't want to see a repeat of the situation in Iraq, and politically, there's a lot of pressure on him from his own side not to do that. Clearly, from the other side of the House, there's a real desire to see more of an outspoken support for the US and Israel than we've seen so far.